Why does Florida have this strange panhandle stretching westward? Why does it end abruptly here and not somewhere further west? Why does it not just become a part of Alabama, which makes way more sense? Well, what if I told you that this odd shape is not just a geographical mistake? It's actually the result of centuries of political maneuvering, ambitious land deals, and outright theft. And what if I were to tell you that the United States was able to steal Florida's panhandle in only 30 seconds? This is the untold story of Florida's panhandle. In 1513, the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon landed on Florida's shores, claiming the land for Spain. At the time, Spain was the dominant power in the New World, establishing a vast empire that stretched from the Caribbean to the Andes Mountains. Yet, unlike Mexico with its gold-filled Aztec Empire or Peru with its wealth of silver, Florida was, by comparison, a disappointment. It was swampy, densely forested, and appeared to lack the resources Spain was accustomed to exploiting. However, Spain didn't abandon Florida. Despite its lack of material wealth, Florida was uniquely positioned as a strategic location. It served as a protective buffer, shielding Spain's richer colonies in the Caribbean and Central America from potential threats. Florida's coastline offered a defensive front against European rivals and pirates who might otherwise disrupt Spain's lucrative trade routes. Basically, they used Florida like a shield that protected Spain's more important land in Central America. As Spain secured its ownership of Florida to the west, French explorers began carving out their own territories. In the late 1600s, French adventurers with names I can't pronounce explored the Mississippi River, claiming it for France. They named the territory Louisiana in honor of King Louis XIV, and their claim extended from the Gulf of Mexico to the Canadian border, and from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. Louisiana was immense, and like Florida, served as a strategic stronghold for the French. Between these two European powers was a natural boundary, the Perdido River. At the time, rivers often marked territorial divisions because they were easy to recognize and provided natural barriers. But this boundary, like many others in the New World, was not very exact. Maps were imprecise, treaties were ambiguous, and enforcement was nearly impossible. This lack of clarity would be the beginning of the conflict that was to come in the later centuries. The 18th century brought a dramatic shift in the balance of power in North America. The British emerged as a dominant force, particularly after the French and Indian War, which ended in 1763. Under the Treaty of Paris, France gave Louisiana west of the Mississippi to Spain, while Britain gained control of Florida. This arrangement, however, was far from stable. Spain's hold on Louisiana was very weak, and its resources were stretched thin, making it difficult to defend its vast empire. In 1800, Spain returned Louisiana to France through the secret Treaty of San Ildefonso. This move was strategic for Napoleon Bonaparte, who wanted to use Louisiana as a launching point for his quest to conquer the Americas. But like Napoleon, his ambitions were short-lived. Pun intended. Napoleon hated the British and was currently at war with them. He had run out of money, so in order to keep fighting, he decided to sell Louisiana to the United States in 1803. The Louisiana Purchase was a monumental moment in American history. For only $15 million, the United States acquired a territory that doubled its size. This is only $350 million today. Yet, as transformative as this deal was, it was also filled with confusion. The boundaries of the purchased land were not clearly defined. The treaty vaguely described it as, quote, including all territories drained by the Mississippi River and its tributaries. This left significant room for interpretation, and interpret the Americans did. Because the treaty was so vague, American leaders were able to claim that Western Florida was a part of the treaty. They claimed that the historical boundary between Louisiana and Florida, the Perdido River, should still stand, effectively claiming the land between the Mississippi and Perdido rivers as part of the Louisiana Purchase. Spain, understandably rejected this claim. From Spain's perspective, the Louisiana Purchase did not include any territory east of the Mississippi, but Spain was in no position to enforce this. You see, at this point, the Spanish Empire was in fast decline. It had been weakened by wars in Europe and independence movements across Latin America. In 1810, tensions in West Florida reached a boiling point. The region was technically under Spanish control, but many American settlers had moved there, and they weren't happy with the way Spain was running things. The settlers felt neglected by the Spanish government, which struggled to maintain order and provide basic governance. Frustration grew until the settlers decided to take matters into their own hands. They declared independence, forming the Republic of West Florida, complete with its own flag and government. This bold step reflected the growing desire among Americans to control the region. However, the Republic of West Florida did not last very long. While the settlers were celebrating their new independence, President James Madison was eyeing the territory. Madison argued that West Florida was actually part of the Louisiana Purchase, which the U.S. had acquired from France in 1803. Using this claim as justification, Madison issued a proclamation annexing the region to the United States. This move effectively ended the Republic of West Florida just a few months after it began. Naturally, Spain protested this sudden annexation. They argued that West Florida was still their territory and had nothing to do with the Louisiana Purchase. But the thing is that Spain was dealing with its own issues elsewhere, including wars in Europe and rebellions in its other colonies. It simply didn't have the resources to defend its claim to West Florida. Madison's swift action set a powerful precedent, showing that the United States was willing to act decisively, and sometimes opportunistically, to expand its territory. The Gulf Coast was a critical region for the young United States. Controlling it meant access to key ports like Mobile and Pensacola, which were essential for trade and national defense. These strategic considerations made American leaders even more determined to secure the rest of Florida, which remained under Spanish control. In 1819, after years of negotiations, the United States and Spain signed the Adams-Onis Treaty. This agreement finally and officially transferred all of Florida to the United States, bringing an end to the Spanish rule in the region. In exchange, the United States agreed to take on $5 million of Spanish debt. The treaty also settled a long-standing boundary dispute between the two nations, defending the western border of the United States. This new border stretched all the way to the Pacific, shaping much of the modern US-Mexico border. So by simply noticing that the Louisiana Purchase was so vague, the American leaders were able to gain around 11,000 square miles of land in roughly 30 seconds by merely adding it to the treaty with Spain. This has to be one of the greatest gaslightings of all time. The acquisition of Florida wasn't even just a territorial gain, it was a strategic victory. It secured the Gulf Coast for the United States, giving the nation access to critical ports and waterways. It also eliminated a foreign power from the region, reducing the threat of a conflict and strengthening US control over its southern border. This moment was a key chapter in the story of America's westward expansion, setting the stage for further growth and development in the decades and centuries to come. But the story doesn't end there, because once Florida became part of the United States, the Panhandle became a point of contention between Florida and Alabama. Alabama, which achieved statehood in 1819, viewed the Panhandle as a natural extension of its territory. Alabama's leaders argued that the region was more closely tied to Alabama geographically and economically than to the rest of Florida. Over the years, Alabama made multiple attempts to gain the Panhandle. These efforts included offers to purchase the land for as much as $1 million, about $22 million today. Panhandle residents largely supported these proposals, voting in favor of joining Alabama in several referendums. Many Panhandle residents felt culturally aligned with Alabama, which was geographically closer to them than distant Tallahassee. Despite these efforts, Florida refused to cede the Panhandle. For Florida's leaders, the Panhandle was an integral part of their state. Losing it would have diminished Florida's size, influence, and access to critical Gulf Coast ports. Alabama's persistence and the wishes of Panhandle residents were not enough to alter the state's boundaries. So that's why Florida has this weird, wonky extension on it, because the United States wanted it really badly, and the Spanish we're unable to fight them for it. So there you go. That's the reason. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you want to support us, leave a comment, leave a like, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.